Of course, this is Nuance, and I am Mike Scala, joined as always by Jay Carter. We'll be speaking about Rikers Island and how a federal judge is holding New York City in contempt of court over conditions on Rikers, as well as some other interesting topics. Jay, of course, is in VA. He's about to head back to Japan, I believe. Of course, also known as Timid, the hip hop artist in Cherry Tokyo. What's going on, Jay?
Um, yeah, just like I said, getting ready for that trek back. So it's about 21 hours total. So
21-hour trip. All right, that's with the layovers and everything.
that's with the layovers and everything. The straight flight from Atlanta to Tokyo, it's about 13 hours. Um, and then with the layovers, it generally comes out to about 21 or more. So we'll see what it is this time going around. I know some shorter layovers this time, but
Wow.
it's a long trip regardless.
Is it always out of Atlanta or sometimes other airports in the US?
The last few have been Atlanta, but prior to that, it was often going through DC.
Okay. And then so to get to VA, how did you take another flight? What do you do?
Atlanta to VA.
Atlanta to VA to a Dulles Airport or something?
No, Dulles is that's DC.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So before it was off from Tokyo to Atlanta. I mean Tokyo to Dulles, then Dulles to VA. Recently, the last few have been from Tokyo to Atlanta, Atlanta to VA. So, and my
Right. Okay. But
airline.
where do you fly right into Charlottesville? Where do you fly into in VA?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay, you do. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so that's a trip. That's a big trip.
It can be. It's I mean, 21 hours, 22. Um, it sounds really long. It's not as bad as it sounds though.
It's funny. It does sound long. It reminds me of someone recently asked how long the bar exam was. And I had to think back because it's been quite some time now, right? But I'm thinking, all right, so it was 2 days, and this is at least my recollection. I could be like way off, but no, I think it's 2 days, and I think it's 8 hours each day,
Gee.
so 16 hours total. And they were like, "Wow, that's crazy! Like you must have a lot of food and snacks and water." I'm like, "Yeah, but you get a lunch break in between. You get an hour or whatever it is in between for lunch. So it's really broken up into, a 4 hour morning session. You go to lunch, you eat, you go to the bathroom, whatever you got to do. 4 hours in the evening, you go home, come back the next day. Four. So it's like kind of like 4 4 hour tests. It's not that crazy.
That's a written test?
Yeah.
4 hours?
Well, a lot of it is multiple choice. There is an essay portion as well.
That's quite insane. I
It's
wonder
not,
if people.
it's not I mean, it sounds crazier than it actually is when you're doing it. Because you know what I mean? Like when you're doing it, you focus actually on trying to finish each portion within that time. So you're not sitting there thinking this is so long. You're actually sitting there thinking, I wish I had more time to get to all these questions.
Right. No wonder people fail often on their first time. I mean, 16-hour test is crazy.
Yeah, one of the days is the New York day, right? At least if you're taking it in New York. So you got the New York day, and then you have the multi-state day, right? So everyone in the country gets those same questions for the multi-state. Those are all multiple choice questions, and they're not
Right.
really any particular state. They're just general questions on various topics in the law. But then you have your state day, and that's when you get essays and different things that are about your state's law in particular. And that's where it can get a little bit confusing as well, because sometimes they conflict. So you have to memorize what the rule is on something multi-state, right? Like what the common law rule is, and then what your particular state's rule. And sometimes they're different. So it's like you have to have these. At least for me, I had these mnemonic devices, right? Like in New York we do this, but outside we do this. Like you just try to figure out ways
Mm.
to keep all this information in your head, and you got to cram. A lot of stuff is just highly crammable.
Mm. Okay.
And I was
Uh,
telling someone else, I don't know, we're on a whole tangent on the bar exam now. I was telling someone that in New York, you could look at the frequency of questions that come up. So on these essay questions, and they say New York is one of the tougher bar exams to take in the country because there are so many topics that they could test you on the New York day. But they give you, if you take a bar course, right? Like Barbary is one of them, Kaplan, there's a few different companies that will do it. You take a bar review course, they'll give you a frequency chart and they'll look at the past, let's say 25, 30 bar exams, whatever it is, and it'll tell you this subject comes up this percent of the time, this one, this percent, and it'll rank. So if there's 21 subjects that they might test you on, it'll give you a ranking from 1 to 21 with the percentage of how often they come up. And so I was obviously looking at that. In fact, I think when I was studying for the bar in New York, I made that my screensaver for a while on my computer, that chart, right? Because I knew I had to be sharp on those most frequent subjects, right? You can't really become a master at everything. That's kind of the trick. You have to prioritize. And it so happened that when I took it, now I forget the exact number of essays. Let's say it's 5 essays on the New York day. All 5 of them were numbers 1 through 5 on a frequency chart, and those are the ones I was most prepared for. Right, the stuff on the bottom I didn't really know that much, but you think, okay, if you get that, tough luck. But you saw it only came up like once over the past 30 years or whatever. So if you see something comes up like 27 out of 30 times, that's the one you're going to spend more time studying.
Right, right. All right, sure. You convinced me. I'll take it. Where do I sign up?
That's a New York day. The multi-state day, you don't have a trick like that. You just got to go hard studying all the topics, but you do the reps. You take a lot of tests under time conditions, right? Try to simulate a real exam, and then you get feedback like, okay, these are your weakest subjects. You got to spend more time on these. You're doing great here. You're crushing these. You know what I mean? And you kind of have stats as you go on the process. And it is the way to do it is to just spend a few months. I think it was like 2 or 3 months where that's all you're doing full time. You really can't work. You really can't do anything else. For those few months, your job is studying for the bar, right? And you treat it like a job. You do your 8 hours a day, and like I said, you get your data in on how well you're doing in certain areas, where to spend more time, what what need to cram more, what flashcards you need to be making, and quizzing yourself, and you know what I mean. But if you treat it like it's your job for those few months, you should be good, right? Because you're not going into it blind. You know what your strengths and weaknesses are. You even have sample exams. Like I went into it knowing that I was doing better than most people in the country, right? And that was obviously a big confidence booster for me, because a lot of people take these bar review courses. So there are thousands of people across the country taking the same course you are, right, to prepare. And so everyone will get a sample test, and then it'll come back like, oh, you scored better than 95% of the students in the country who took this test. And you think, okay, well, that seems to be in pretty good shape, right? But
Right, right. Yeah,
good to be prepared that way.
you're saying, like basically that studying, you treat it like it's a job. You do 8 hours a day for this
Yeah.
amount of time.
Yeah.
Um, it's that's how I approached my master's degree when
Mm-hmm.
I did that earlier this year. Like I finished my master's degree in 2.5 months, and the way that I did it, since it was, basically at my own pace and self type of at my own pace type of thing, I treated it like it was clocking in work. I
Mm-hmm.
would do 8 hours or more of studying a day or work, maybe not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily just straight studying, but working on whatever it was so
Right.
that I could finish the classes and get to the test or the projects at the end in a much shorter amount of time. Because if you really think about it, under the traditional semester type of system, you go in for a class and you do 60 to maybe 90 minutes a week on that class, right? That's how long class time is. And then, you've got about, I forget how many weeks it is in the semester, but so if you're doing it 8 hours, you can get those reps in a shorter amount of time if you're doing it straight back to back. And so that's how
Right.
I did similar in that regard.
Yeah. 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 And you took a lot of breaks.
Yeah, so what I did was um I used the Pomodoro technique.
Okay. I never heard of that.
Pomodoro technique is a time management type of technique to where you run a timer, and Pomodoro comes from, I believe it's Italian for tomato or something like that, and it's comes from like kind of a cooking timing type of thing. So you sit down
Okay.
and you set the alarm for 20 minutes, right? And you do 20 minutes of direct focus on whatever the task is, no distractions, 20 minutes on that. Then you take a 5 minute break. Then you go back and do another 20 minutes. You do
Mm,
4 rounds of that, and then you
mm,
take a 20-minute break, and then you come back and do that over again. And so
okay.
that's called the Pomodoro technique.
Yeah, it's funny. I never heard of that technique, but when I was studying for the bar, I actually did something similar. And I was basing that off of the theory of primacy and recency, right? Where as human beings, we tend to remember the most of the beginning and the end of anything, right? Like the first thing we hear and the last thing we hear. And so the theory there is if you take a lot of breaks, there's more beginnings and more endings, right? Like I remember the first thing
Right.
I read when I picked up this book, and then when I was about to pick it down, put it down for my break, the last thing I read, right? So if you do that a lot of times, now you're picking it up and putting it down a lot. There's a lot more beginnings and endings. So I would play a baseball video game in between, and I did that because I think I was reading something about you want to practice. I think it was hand-eye coordination or something, but something about the game they said actually helped you with your memory as well.
Mm.
Keeping your brain sharp or whatever it was, right? So I was like, all right, so that seemed like a good game to play in between, and this way you don't burn yourself out either, right? Because if you're studying 8 hours a day on this very dense legal material, you can drive yourself crazy if you don't have those frequent breaks. And so I would do that, and I don't think I had it where it was set. I don't think it was a schedule where I was going to take this many breaks a day or between this time and this time. It wasn't really like that. I think it was more like you know whatever made sense that day, the how I was feeling or what I was studying. Right, like I just like did a really crazy chapter on criminal law. Now I'm feeling a little heavy or whatever. Let me put this down for a little bit, play a game, and come back to it. You know what I mean? So
Right.
just kind of going off of feeling, but I think that was an important part of it, taking frequent breaks.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, because you think about it, for example, you do your 20 minutes if you're following this schedule or as needed. You do your term and then you take that 5 minute break and you come back. What you're doing is you're picking up where you left off. So that means you've had to lock it in your head what you just finished doing so that you know where you pick back up. And so you're kind of ingesting it a little bit more because of those the breaks, the primacy or recency type of effect. Now,
True,
you
true.
go back and sit down and you're back in where you're at. So that means you had to hold on to it that time.
Right, right. You kind of have to internalize it, right?
Right.
Make it a part of you, so you're not actively thinking about it anymore. Now it's just there in your memory for you to access. So
Right.
I actually would take the same approach sometimes with performing or even giving a speech, right? Like, you're about to go on stage. Let's say I'm going to speak to a big crowd and I've got all these ideas in my head of what I'm going to say, all these bullet points, right? I'm trying to go over each point in my head. I'll try not to do that for a certain amount of time right
Mm.
before I speak. I don't want to be like right before I take the mic going over my, in my head, all the things I want to say. I want that to be internalized by then. So by the time I'm doing it, it feels more natural. I'm kind of just like pulling from my memory bank and kind of going through the reps in my head without it being like something I was just thinking about a second ago, and I'm more nervous now trying to get it right. And I mean, like it's almost like a cooling off period you need before. So
Right.
all that thinking of what I'm going to say and everything, I want to be done doing that 5-10 minutes at least prior to my speaking and think about something completely different. I want to now focus on the other speakers who are there, whatever else is going on, right? Just be relaxed. So I'm not so uptight and so focused on, what I mean? Just now it's all in here already. So when I go speak,
Right.
I can draw from what's already inside me, but it isn't like this hectic. I try to remember what was point three again. You know what I mean? Like and then you could even deviate from the script a little bit. Like it's cool because it's just part of you now. You know what I mean? It's like it's something like instead of something you're trying to memorize.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And I think that's a it makes a big difference. So
yeah.
that's yeah, one of the techniques I use when I do have to do bigger projects that Pomodoro technique. And I do it with whatever, just editing or you know, what have you.
But what if you get on a roll though, and the Pomodoro technique says it's time now to take a break, and you're like, oh man, but I'm editing this scene like I don't want to like lose the momentum I got.
Um, there have been times when I've blown past it and just been like, yeah, I'm in that groove, but for the most part, I will try to take that break.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, because using that technique, the idea is also that you'll probably get more done even with these breaks
True.
because when you don't have a time limit on it, that you can be distracted, you're not locking directly in.
You
There's
lose
all
your
sorts of
focus.
other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So even with taking all these breaks and whatnot, you're supposed to be actually getting more done. But yeah.
See, so now I'm kind of in the zone where I got so much stuff going on that I might take a break doing one thing by doing something else and then going back to the other thing. You know what I mean?
So
Like,
your break is actually the work time for a different project.
right, right. Or like if I'm doing, something in music and something in law and then something with
Right,
politics in the community, I might be like, all right,
right,
I'm gonna spend, half an hour working on this music video. Then I'm gonna switch over to this legal brief. Then I'm gonna switch over to these turkeys we were giving out or whatever it is. Then we
right,
go back to the music video, and you know what I mean. And this way, you're taking breaks and you don't get burnt out from any one thing, but you're still being productive and getting things done the whole time.
right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's to good techniques to utilize.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of technique, that's a good segue. I did want to mention briefly this rhythm and flow because you mentioned that you watched some of it. I think one episode you said that you'd seen so
I
far.
just watched the Eminem episode of Rhythm and Flow. I saw the whole first season,
Yes, me too.
um, and I was
Right.
I really
I
didn't really
liked it. Yeah, I was kind of on the rappers and but I liked it overall. I think it was an entertaining show to watch. Now, if you were to ask anybody who won that now, I don't think anybody would be able to tell you, except maybe if you just saw it again yesterday or something like that, right?
And I
It's a
think the main
recent
thing
issue
of
now.
yeah, the main thing about the first season that kind of like it was the judges. It was Ti and Cardi B as like
Right.
MC judges. Just
I like Ti on that show though. He has some personality that I hadn't seen before.
yeah, but like I don't know. It just and that could be some personal bias on my part, thinking like these guys aren't MCs. What are they doing judging
I think
MCing?
I give it to Ti. I think he's a good MC. I kind of
Yeah,
felt that way about Cardi though. Like, what is she doing judging anyone rapping? Like, I
yeah.
felt that way a little bit. I'm
But
not gonna.
we are in the age where, Snoop Dogg is a judge on The Voice now. So
Right, right, right. So this season probably does have better judges. Oh, Chance was a good judge though on the last
yeah,
one.
Chance was cool.
Yeah, so we have some better judges now, I think, on this season. I really don't know much, or I didn't know much about Lotto until this show.
Right,
She seems like, I mean, I don't really still don't know much about her music, but she seems likable at least on the show. Um, and apparently, she's had some big songs or whatever.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
the one thing that struck me was the contestants, right? The people who were coming to be on the show, all were trying to rap, like they were all trying to spit,
right,
and I liked that, right? Because so much of what you hear now, at least with commercial mainstream hip hop, tends not to be that, right? It tends to be more sing-songy, auto-tune, melodic. We even had the mumble rap stuff a few years back, and you don't really
right,
get right people spit. We have talked about on here with Kendrick's Not Like Us being so big, maybe it's becoming more front and center in the culture. Maybe something like this will actually help it even further if it becomes a big show. I mean, it's on Netflix, so that's good. But that was impressionable to me that everyone on there was at least trying to rap. Now they weren't all great, but they at least were trying to spit. No one really got on there doing a mumble rap thing or some melodic stuff. But then I was realizing they probably wouldn't be on there in the first place, right? Because this is the kind of show where you got to get up on stage and
right,
rap to impress judges, right? If your whole thing is auto tune me singing in the studio, you're probably not going to be on that kind of show.
right. Yeah, that's true. And I think even in the first season though, they really weren't doing like the auto tune sing songy either.
Right,
So
right. But that was a few years back already.
it
So
was a few years
I
back.
was kind of thinking like, oh boy, like here we go. Like, what kind of rappers are we going to get now? And then it's also a matter of how are they judging it? What are they looking for in a talent? Are they looking for someone who will play on mainstream rap radio today? Or are they looking for someone with MC skills? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what is the criteria here?
Right, right. Yeah, I mean it seems like they're trying to tap a few different portions of it because they do have the performance, they do have the new song, they do have the battle, even though you're probably not a battle MC, you know.
That was interesting though. That was the episode that you saw, right?
Yeah, I only watched it because Eminem was a guest on there.
Well, it's funny because if you go back and you watch the end of the episode prior to that, that's when they all learn that they're flying into Detroit. And they're gonna, I think even at the end of the episode, you find out they're about to meet M and they all go crazy. They'll say like he's their favorite rapper, like they're all going nuts. And so that's kind of cool to watch that moment. They're all like geeking out over the fact that he's there. And they're at St. Andrews Hall doing the battle, like, M came up, the 8 Mile thing, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that was kind of cool to watch. But yeah, but the whole battle episode that followed it was also a good episode, I thought, and it was entertaining. It was fun to watch. Yeah, they weren't necessarily battle MCs, but some of them surprised me. Some of them had punchlines. Some of them
Yeah,
had
yeah, yeah.
bars.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I'm noticing that listening to a lot of new stuff, trying to, give new stuff a chance. Um and there's some good guys out there, some good people out there that are doing their thing. Like Corday is good, King Los
mm,
is really dope. Bars are crazy. Um some of the women are doing their thing. Um, you know, Meg the Stallion can
mm.
can get down and do her thing. What's the other? There's another girl, and I can't. She's got a heavy accent. What's her name? Flo or something?
Glorilla.
Glorilla. You know, I'm warming up to her.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
more her. She's got personality, which I think is cool, and she seems like a genuine person.
Do
So,
they really have bars though? I mean, are you grading them on a curve, or is it like, oh wow, they said something that wasn't whack, so I'm gonna say that they surprised me? You know what I mean? Like your expectations, I think, matter going into this.
well, for Corday and for King Los, bars.
Okay.
King Los is crazy.
Yeah.
Um, like he's doing the type of stuff, some of the stuff that I really like. I'm talking uh, Black Thought type of vein,
Okay.
Common type of vein,
Wow.
with a little bit of a harder edge.
Right. And that's when I realized I kind of grade rappers on that scale. Somebody called me an elitist. Maybe I am in a sense because even watching a show like this, right? I'm looking for someone who's going to be at that level. And then I
Right.
realized maybe that's not really fair because those are elite level
But
MCs.
they should be fair because those
Yeah.
when those guys became that elite level MC in your mind, they were probably like 17, 18, 19, like, you know what I mean? Like it didn't take them like
Oh,
their 30s,
I
40s
don't.
to get
Well,
there.
okay, but these guys are pretty young on this show for the most part.
Yeah. So I mean it's like why wouldn't we expect them to have skills?
Right, but maybe it's not fair to expect them to already be developed to that point, because they're just a lot of them just starting out. They're like 2 years in, like whatever. You know, I think to really get to that level, it probably takes like 10 plus, 15 plus years to like really be a master at MC.
Yeah, but I mean, think about it. Everybody, I think we don't realize how young a lot of our favorites were when they first dropped.
Even if they were young, they probably were at it since they were kids.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
but
Because
why
they're
wouldn't we
like 5
expect
years old.
why wouldn't we expect the MCs of today to also have been at it when since they were kids in a world where it's even more prevalent and around them and more accessible?
Yeah, it's fair, but I mean, when you hear them say they've only been rapping for 2 years, it's like, okay, well, they got something. Maybe if they stick with it. But yeah,
Right.
and another thing is, are we to expect everyone we see on TV or every song that we play to be by someone with elite level skills? I mean, elite level means most people aren't at that level, right? So,
Right. True.
so I
So
mean, is there just a such thing as being okay with listening to a good but not great rapper?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a lot. Like MC Hammer wasn't a lyrical monster. Sir Mix-a-Lot wasn't, doing verbal gymnastics.
Right.
No.
Right. Because a lot of these, and that's kind of like I guess my gripe watching it, because I'm trying to be more fair and less critical, less harsh. Because a lot of them are like, okay, they got a little bit of stage presence, they can flow on the beat, you know what I mean? But what are they saying that's really spectacular? Like this, I want to hear something and be like, man, I wish I would have thought of that. Or that's crazy. How do you know what I mean? Like something that's
Uh,
going to inspire me to pick up my pen and start writing. It doesn't seem like a lot of them are even trying to do that though. They're trying to rap and like sometimes you hear a bar here and there, but like it doesn't seem like maybe they are trying, just missing the mark. I don't know. To me, it's like, where's the greatness? But then I'm like, maybe I'm just expecting to hear Nas, and obviously I'm not going to get that, so I should just chill out a little bit.
yeah. And it's also about finding that type of MC that does do what it is that you're looking to hear.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like if it was back in that day and you're looking to hear something that's a Nas type, a Common type, a Black Thought type, and what's being played is MC Hammer and Sir Mix-a-Lot, you're gonna have the same type of vibe, even though these
Yeah, but
days,
you have to understand, like, what makes those artists uh, successful, or the appeal of those artists is the songs that they were making, right?
sure.
The monster singles.
Sure.
Mix-a-Lot had Baby Got Back, that became an anthem, right? Hammer Time, all that kind of stuff. But that's a different
Got
thing.
Back, Posse on Broadway, Swat,
Yeah.
Buttermilk.
But that's different now from a show like this where they're just basically given a mic and they're saying, impress us. There are ciphers, there are battles. Yeah, they got some time in the studio as they get on to further rounds. They finally get to make some records. But when they're first coming on, like auditioning and kind of doing their thing for the judges, they're just spitting. They're just spitting raps basically for the judges, right? And for the audience. And so they're not performing hit singles. They're just rapping. So if that's what they're doing, you would expect to hear someone good at rapping, right? Otherwise, like there's no context there to know if they can give you.
Right.
I mean, maybe just a little bit like, oh, they got some star quality, some charisma. Maybe their
Right.
voice is catchy, whatever. You know, maybe you can find little cues. But when it comes to rapping, though, you know what I mean? Like they're either spitting or they're not.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
but it's fun. It's a fun show
Like,
to watch, and I think there is some talent on there.
yeah, I liked some of the battles.
Yeah.
Some were lacking. But again, battling can be difficult, especially if that's not what you are. That's different. I think people sometimes like put that in like it's something that everybody does, right? Like if you're a battle MC, you're different than an MC that actually pens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And different than a one who actually sits down and does songs as a main focus, right? Someone who does, lyrical gymnastics as a like these are skills under the MC umbrella that are like specialties, and so
Right. And the stereotype is that battle rappers can't make music. So,
and I think part of it is because their focus is different,
yeah,
right?
it's a different sport. I agree.
Right, a different sport, and it's
Yeah.
the same as DJs. You know, anybody
Right.
can play songs at a party, but it takes a particular skill and time and effort to sit down and know all these records in your head, know the way the blends come in, right?
Yeah.
And even that type of DJ is different than the DJ that can like cut up a record crazy.
Right, right. Scratching or then, right, mixing, putting a mixed tape together, like you said, rocking a party. There's all different types of skill sets there.
Right. And so, I think we need to definitely give respect to people who are able to execute on those skills, and recognize that, it takes a little bit more than actually just surface level stuff in many regards.
Right, right.
Same
But
with mixing.
these battles were written battles. I had 24 hours to write like 16 bars, so it wasn't that crazy.
I couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it. Why?
24 hours to memorize a
Oh,
verse?
come on, bro.
It'd be
16
done.
a
It'd be
whole
done.
day? You
It'd
couldn't
be done.
memorize 16 lines in 24 hours?
No,
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Come on, it's easy.
I would no.
So, okay, what if you were an actor in a play? You couldn't get like, if you had one scene, 16 lines in that scene, you couldn't get those 16 lines memorized in a day, a whole day?
I probably could, but they wouldn't
Oh,
be exact.
okay.
The difference is with your bars is they kind of have to be, at least the ending has to be exact.
Yeah, but
Uh,
it's easier because it's ramen. And so you can actually think about your thought process. At least this is what I do. I think about my thought process. Like I'm almost rewriting the verse in my head as I'm reciting it. Like I'll say a line. I'm like, how would I rhyme that? Oh, yeah, I know how would I rhyme that. That's the way I did it. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
what you just said is the clue for what to say next, if that makes sense. It builds off of it.
Sure, sure, absolutely. But I also use not only that, I use the beat as a clue to what comes next.
Okay.
Like
You can't really
my
do that with this because it's like the J is just gonna throw on a beat or whatever.
right, my part of my memory process is the totality of it. So even if a song that I may know and I can perform, if I do it a cappella,
Mhm.
it might be a little bit more difficult because I don't have the whole totality of the environment as the path forward.
But see, also I I write by, I don't know what your process is. For me, I'll repeat the same line in my head over and over again as I'm thinking of what's good to say after that a lot of the times.
Right.
And so by the time I have 16 bars or whatever it is done, it's all memorized already because those other 15 bars were repeated in my head like 1,000 times. I put the reps in already, right?
Right, right,
When the verse is written, it's already memorized.
right. Yeah. So it's yeah, my memory is the way it works on those because I think mine is more visual
Hmm.
than text based. So
Yeah.
yeah, 24 hour. I just watch, and even if I don't like their rhymes or they don't really connect with me, just being able to do that within that short amount of time and come up there and
Well, yeah.
takes a
And
gives
you know,
me
to be
respect.
fair, right, and that's part of the whole, I guess, managing expectations and knowing what you're looking at, right? Like, you have to understand that they're under a lot of pressure. It's not just the time constraints; it's the cameras. It's probably recutting things. It's television production, right? Recutting scenes a million times. You saw. I don't think you didn't see this episode. If you go back and watch the prior episode, the one before the battle, it's the
Mm,
cipher episode, right?
right.
Um, you could see it. I was looking at the faces of the judges. Their eyes were red, and like they were slurring the words. They weren't high or drunk. They really looked tired. It looked like they were on that set for 16 plus hours and they just had
They
nothing.
probably were.
Right, right. And in fact, at one point, I think even Lotto was seen drinking a cup of coffee that someone brought her. Like you could tell they were just tired, and so there's a lot of pressure on everyone involved in a show like that. And if you're going to judge them for saying, "Oh, maybe their bars weren't the greatest," yeah, they didn't have a whole lot of time to write and memorize them, so that's something to take into account as well.
Right. So, but
All right. Well, I like the show. I would recommend it. It gets a thumbs up for me if anyone is interested
that's what's
in,
up.
in checking out hip hop. And I think it does have a certain authenticity for it being a Netflix show. So that's cool.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So,
Yeah. So we had a few topics we wanted to get into. We mentioned the federal judge saying that New York City is in contempt of court for not getting its act together with respect to Rikers Island, right? They're saying the conditions on Rikers have not improved. The court gave the city a list of factors. I think it was what, 15 or 16 factors that they were supposed to look at and address. 18 reforms that the federal judge had given the city.
mm,
They're saying that they failed on all 18 points. So they're batting zero in this. And as a result, they're ordering Rikers Island to be under a receivership. Now, you might be asking what that means. What are the terms and conditions? How this all works? What are the next steps? And unfortunately, that information is not known yet because this ruling just recently came out, and the judge is giving the lawyers until January. What's the date here? Was it January 14th to submit a proposal as to how this receivership might look? So,
I- I'm sorry. I don't think any agency is really interested in cleaning up Rikers.
hmm.
Rikers being dirty and in poor conditions has been a running joke, a running talking point for decades, and it hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
Different governors, different mayors, different administrations, and it's just promises of shutting it down, promises of cleaning it up.
Right.
It's
The
just
whole
I don't
shutting
think
it down thing, to me, always seemed performative in the sense of you're not addressing the underlying issues. So, okay, you
right,
could make the argument that some of the issues are inherent to the location while they're on an island and not being supervised, whatever. But I mean, it's not like they're in the middle of the ocean, though. It's in Queens, right? It's in East Elmhurst, New York City. So yes, it's an island, but what are the
right,
underlying issues? So if you were to shut that down and build something else in its place, why are we to believe or to be confident in the idea that the issues will be better? It'll be so much better when you build Rikers version 2.
right. I mean, if you shut down Rikers there and then you take that same staff and go to this new shiny facility, you can have the same problems. It's more about management within their accountability and all that. And it can't go on for decades and not be changed unless there's no real interest in changing it.
Mm, yeah, yeah, or less than not pushed hard enough to change it. So
I mean, it's
what,
been a big topic in New York for a long time. It
been a
really
topic of conversation, but now we're actually seeing a federal judge say that they're going to take over. That's what I'm saying. So the judge is saying now it goes under receivership, and the receiver is going to be answerable directly to the court. So
right,
I guess the question is, what are the consequences? Because you could do whatever you want. But okay, so now what? A receiver comes. So someone is appointed to oversee this operation. But now what happens if conditions still don't improve? They're
right,
answerable to the court. What does the court do? Does the court throw that person in Rikers? You know what I mean? Like what happens? What actually? How is it going to be enforced?
right. I mean, I don't think, to me, it just doesn't seem like there's really any interest in it. Like even
Well,
in
there's
this
interest in it, but
situation,
you're saying
but
amongst people who run it, because I mean there are a lot of advocates who talk about this all the time.
the advocates, I'm talking about, yeah, they do, but I'm talking about as far as no interest in change, and they're actually being changed for the people that are handling it to make their changes that either advocates are pushing for
Right.
or that they're being criticized for. They're not really interested in it
Why
because
do you think? Why do you think that is? Is it the unions?
why do I think it? I don't know. Um, I think part of it is it's the same thing in law enforcement where they can, they're protected in some way from accountability. Um, uh, that's probably a big part of it. Whatever interests might be in there for it running the way that it is. There's the attitudes against inmates in general, that I think probably plays a
Didn't Mayor
part.
Adams even make a statement like that once? We covered it once. I forget the exact statement, but it sounded wow. Remember that?
Something about the,
Something
yeah.
like the people that you're fighting for are inmates anyway, so why are you fighting? Something like that, right?
Right.
You
And I
try to
think that's,
conditions.
if you have administrations and leaders with that mindset or mentality, they're gonna drag their feet when it comes to making changes that are, treat people like humans or get conditions better.
So I have a quote here from the New York City Correction Officers Benevolent Association. You can see with their stances on this. The quote is today's ruling by Judge Swain was largely based on the false and erroneous narrative promulgated by the federal monitor, who continues to misrepresent the cause of increased violence in our jails. The quote goes on to say, we have been defunded, short staffed, scapegoated, and handcuffed by the New York City Council and federal monitor, which have ignored every proposal we've made to keep our jails safe for everyone. So the union is saying that other parties have stood in the way here.
For the past, I don't know, how long has it been? I think, yeah, it could be cleaned up. The process could be started in a couple of days. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like really, it sounds like it's a management problem, or at least a big part of it's a management problem. There's a facilities issue, but if there was a real serious interest in doing it, someone could just walk in there and be like, okay, this is what we're doing starting from today. It's not okay. Well, we need to. The judge has said this, so we're gonna give like a little bit of a grace period for you to do this. Like, no, just start doing it now. You've been waiting like 20 years now. Like, what's going
And
on?
that's why they've been held in contempt of court, right? Because the federal judge told New York City, ordered New York City to
Right,
improve. And it wasn't just a vague order of make conditions better. They gave an actual list of
right,
factors, prove all of these factors, and said they failed on all of them. And so, to your point, obviously there are a few ways of reading that, and who knows everything, all the details here. But the perception, I mean, I think it's easy to come away with an impression that they just didn't try if they failed in all 18.
right.
So
Failed all 18, right?
they failed all 18 according to the court. Yeah.
That just means they didn't try at all. Like, how do you
Now,
fail all 18? Like, that doesn't show like you put any effort in.
at least not to the court's satisfaction, right? Maybe they thought
Right,
they would something. The court was like, "That's not what we had in mind. You had to go above and beyond."
right.
So, uh, a number that's been repeated a lot is 33 New York City inmates have died since Mayor Adams took office. They've died while in custody or immediately upon their release. 19 died in 2022 alone, making it the deadliest year in New York City's jail system in decades.
That's crazy.
Now, I've heard Mayor Adams say that it's not the city's fault that they died. They had issues, health issues or whatever it was. But still a staggering number, especially
Yeah.
when it's it's you see it, right? It's the deadliest year in decades. And when something like that happens, there could be all kinds of faults, right? It's not always fair to point the finger at one person or one thing, one factor, but there needs to be accountability, right? And it's like we always hear about when the economy is doing well, president gets the credit for it. When it's doing poorly, the president gets blamed, even if there are a million other factors. I think
Right.
it's kind of similar here in the sense that Adams is the mayor, and when something like this happens, he is accountable for what happened and to try to make it better.
Right. But like you said, in that regard, these things were happening before Adams was mayor, you know.
Right.
So it's more of a systemic issue than it is a specific mayor issue. So
Sure, though, like I said, this was the deadliest year, 2022. This was the
right,
deadliest year in history, or at least in recent history in New York City. And so,
right.
right, that is something that's at least noteworthy.
Sure, sure. I mean the quote that Adams put forth regarding the inmates could show just his attitude towards any sort of work or effort in that regard. And that can be what exacerbates the numbers over there, you know.
Yeah. So I just realized what might be causing I'm still getting that audio glitching when you speak, but I'm realizing because I got a message on my computer here that my resources may be low based on all of these things that have been plugged in. So for those who don't know, we got the webcam going. I just got a new mic, a USB mic for this, and a ring light. So I've got three different devices plugged into USB ports on my computer, and it's like, what the hell? We're kind of on overload right now, and we're going to make Jay sound like a robot.
Okay. Well, hopefully it didn't record as a robot sounding.
Right, right.
We did the AI guest a long time ago. We don't need to do that one again.
Yes, absolutely. Chat GPT said that Al Gore uh, was still president, I think.
Something, yeah, it said something about Al Gore. It really liked Al Gore at that time.
It did. Maybe Al Gore really did invent the internet. So, speaking of presidents, since ChatGPT thinks Al Gore was a president, we wanted to talk a little bit about the pardon of Hunter Biden, right?
Right.
Think I had spoken a while back on here about it must have been an awkward Thanksgiving, maybe last year or 2 years ago, when President Biden said he was not going to pardon his son. I'm thinking, wow, we understand politically why he would say something like that at the time with the election going on. Maybe someone would argue it was the right decision to not pardon him, politics aside, but certainly could have potentially made for an awkward family dynamic, right? You always see how much he loves his son.
Right.
If you're his son, what are you thinking? What are you saying to your father at the time? You're putting your presidential ambitions ahead of the love of your son, ahead of your family here. I mean, it's debatable whether it was the right move or the wrong move or whatever, but it always struck me as potentially an awkward scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I think I agreed with Biden not stepping in. Because we don't want our people in power to use their positions to benefit themselves personally. I mean, that's
Mhm.
part of what we hope not to happen. So I agree with Biden not stepping in to pardon his son. His son did whatever he did, got into whatever it was. Um, so you got to take that. You got to deal with that. Now, the pardon now, again, under normal circumstances, I would completely disagree with it. But in this situation, I agree with Biden pardoning him
Mm.
because with the new administration coming in, this division, this political attacks and Trump's revenge train here, Hunter Biden will not get justice. Regardless, guilty or not guilty, he's going to get railroaded by an administration that is going to listen to whoever listen to Trump and is going to crucify this guy unfairly. And so I agree with him stepping in this situation.
Well, we are joined by Sheba Abraham from the League of Women Voters. Long time no see, Sheba. I think did you move or something recently? What's going on with you?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I moved,
Nice.
and yeah, a lot has been going on. Read the World is getting started again. We're going to be implementing the program in another school. So I've been
Okay.
quite busy with that, among other things. Of course, my league meetings and community meetings as well.
It almost looks like Sheba is in Rikers Island.
Yeah, you get locked up or something? What'd you do?
No, no, does it look that bad? I have to
It
Looks
use a
like
looks like you got
background
a.
there.
Did you get a haircut?
No, yeah, I did.
I
yeah.
like it.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I like it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Sheba, we were just talking about the president pardoning his son, of course, after saying that he would not. Do you have any particular thoughts on that? Was it the right move, or are you upset with him for that? Was it the wrong thing to do?
Well, I thought about him protecting his son.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if that was the right thing to do or
Mm.
what President Biden's thoughts were behind, what made him do pardon his son once he said he would uphold any ruling that
Right.
came
Now,
down.
obviously, the
So,
timing of this is something to mention, right? The fact that it was done after the election. And so
yeah.
it's going to look like, he said what he said prior to the election, but now that he doesn't have the election to worry about anymore, he's going to do what he wants to do. And I don't know if that's entirely surprising to many people either, right? I think a lot of people were speculating, okay, after the election, we'll see if he sticks true to that no pardon thing.
I
Well, I never thought much about it. I thought the whole thing was really over, but I guess, that's a bit naive to think that that would not be on his father's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going to protect my son. I don't know what's going to happen, as Jay was saying, with the new administration that's coming in.
And
But,
I think that's a valid consideration to make, right? I mean,
mhm,
very cynical about this and say, well, he's just trying to come up with an excuse for doing it now. But I do think that there is validity in the concern that you do have another administration coming in, and what are they going to possibly do? Now, pardons are funny, right? Because it wasn't just a pardon for the crimes that he was charged with or convicted of, right? It was a
mhm,
pretty sweeping pardon that was issued for 10
yeah.
years, pardoning him from prosecution for any federal offense, not just the ones that he already had. So
Oh,
there are
mhm,
concerns here. I think that the new administration was going to go after him for other things, right? This
absolutely.
legal trouble he was in now was
yeah.
to the gun that was lying on the gun application or something silly.
Right.
Mhm, mhm,
And we can speak about that as well, because how often are people really prosecuted, and how often do people face jail time for that? I think it's pretty clear that Hunter was targeted specifically because he was a president's son, right? So it was a political
mhm,
prosecution in the
mhm,
Absolutely.
first place. So,
And Biden and not Biden, Trump has basically, these past several years has basically been publicly blaming all of his legal troubles on a hit job from Biden, um,
right.
using the DOJ as a personal attack machine to go after his political enemies, and Trump painting himself as a victim. And so now Trump's coming in, and I believe he's going to do the same thing, even though it doesn't line up with facts, because the judges and the one things that have shut down Trump's cases oftentimes were Republican judges, and in some cases judges that Trump himself put on there. It's just that
Right.
he doesn't want to
Well,
be able to be held accountable for the laws that he's broken.
the point I was going to make, though, on Hunter is that I think there may be a concern here when you look at the sweeping language of this, especially that
Right.
it wouldn't just be for lying on a gun application. They
No.
might try to get them on other things like, Burisma, whatever these, and a lot of these things come up in
mhm,
far right, conspiracy theory circles. But with this new administration coming in, you don't know what they're going to try to pin on
Right.
something like that, right? Does it set a precedent, though, now that's dangerous, or does it not even matter, right? Because I saw some people concerned that this is going to embolden Trump to pardon his own kids, but really he probably would have done that anyway.
He was going, definitely, if there was something, because I don't think any of his
mhm.
kids. Well, maybe what's the one? Maybe the one guy is looking at something, but he's gonna pardon them anyway. He's gonna pardon himself of anything. He's gonna pardon. It's We're in
Jason.
that territory right now.
Yeah.
And I think with
Okay.
Biden, no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, Jay, does this then coincide with what you were saying on here previously about Biden needing to do something? Is this him doing something?
I think in that regard is looking at what's coming in. Now, the criticism that some people are having with this is that um, he's making these pardons for his son because he knows what's going to happen, or he can speculate what's going to happen with this new administration and all these changes coming in. What about for other folks? If you're going to put in these things to mitigate
Mhm.
the damage and the severity of actions that the new administration is going to come in and do, what about other folks who don't have the benefit of having their father being the president? What other
But
things are
you
you
know,
going to do to help lessen some of the damage?
but I think when Trump was previously in office, he pardoned quite a few people.
Yeah, and actually, some of those people are now complaining about Biden pardoning Hunter, people that
Yeah. But you know, I thought
But I mean, even
all
people
presidents
not even,
pardon people. You know what I mean? All governors
yeah,
pardon people at the state level. You don't always hear about it in the news, right?
right.
It's not always a big story like this obviously is, but it's something that they all do. And it's always kind of a funny thing, right? It's not always that. I don't think it's really usually mostly that the executive thinks that the person is innocent. Like you think that they're conducting their own legal research and thinking like, oh, this case should have been
Right,
overturned. A lot of times it's like it's maybe not as overt as their child, but a lot of times it's um, I went to law school with the person's lawyer and they called me up and asked me for a favor. You know what I mean? George
right,
Hmm.
Bush, George Bush, W. Bush pardoned John Forte of Fuji's fame, right?
right,
And I
Hmm.
believe the reason was because John Forte's lawyer was a friend of George Bush's. So
right,
Hmm.
this happens all the time, especially as people are leaving office, presidents, governors, because they don't have to worry about the political ramifications anymore.
right.
That's part of our legal framework. Should it be? I mean, it does seem unfair in a sense, right? That people who get pardoned usually are people who are close in some way with the person
Right,
in office.
right.
But if I remember correctly, they had a list of people that were in jail, in prison, that Trump had pardoned, if I remember that, because they had
Oh yeah,
a list of people, not
that's
Yeah,
only
all
people that
everybody does.
were
presidents. I'm
close
saying
to him.
you'll find that list for all presidents though.
All presidents have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's the hypocritical to really come after Joe for doing so. I know some people say,
Mhm.
he promised that he wouldn't do it, and so he basically lied to us. I can see that angle. However, his situation has changed. This is not a normal situation
Yeah.
with this
Mhm.
administration coming in. I don't think if if Kamala had won,
Mm.
I don't suspect he would have done the pardon for his son. So I think
I don't
the
know.
situation needs.
I don't know if that's true, but I think the point here is that we don't know for sure one way or the other.
Mhm.
You
Right,
know,
right, right.
if I had to guess, I suspect he still might have on the way out the office.
So
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I have a question. Have you heard of HR 9495?
By number, no.
No, it's a bill that was passed by the Congress
Okay.
last week. And it's has to do with nonprofits. And if the president or the Treasury Department suspect that if they think you're a terrorist or if you support a terrorist organization, they strip you of your 501c3 status. That's I think it's in a way it's a dangerous bill, and when you have time or
I would have to,
legislative,
yeah, I have to
yeah,
read the language of
research
it.
that.
The way that you're characterizing it sounds like a violation of the First Amendment. Um, but I don't want to speak on something I don't know what it says and how it's implemented.
right.
Right. 'Cause
That's
I
the one that ACLU has warned about, that one that it could be used to silence government critics.
yes.
Right. Because
Yeah.
obviously, all of these things are written to sound positive, right? Like, oh, okay, they're terrorists, so you don't want to associate with them. But then you have to start asking who classifies whom as a terrorist.
Right,
Uh, does the new administration come in and have a terrorist list and put groups on there that have political viewpoints they disagree with? Is that why they're being classified as terrorists? I mean, because
right.
that kind of thing has happened. So you have to be careful with that stuff.
And I think that's where we're heading with the new administration coming in, which I think makes sense for Biden to pardon his son. Politics has infected the justice system, and
Hmm.
there's got to be he had to do something here. Now, one thing from this that I observed, um, and I think is one of the reasons why Democrats keep losing is because they all just came out and immediately, well, not all. Let me clarify that. There are several who are very outspoken on being opposed to what Biden has done here. And they're not looking at what the situation is. They're not recognizing what the present situation is. You're playing by the rules, and we want you to play by the rules, but understand the rules have changed. The game has changed, and there's going to be a different situation come January 20th. If you're not looking with that foresight, then you're going to keep losing. Even if you play by the rules, at least understand how we got to have to navigate this new administration coming in. And
Right. An analogy I heard once before, it's like, if you're a fan of baseball, you could disagree with the designated hitter rule, right? How teams get to bat for the pitcher. But you might not like that if you're a baseball purist. You might think everyone should have to bat, including the pitcher. But with that being said, have that discussion, whatever. When it comes time to field a team, if you put a team on the field and don't use that rule, you have your pitcher up there swinging and missing, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage because the other team now is playing by a different set of rules.
absolutely. And that's what we're looking at. The other,
Yeah.
in this case, the incoming party is playing by a completely different set of rules, and we've seen it over and over again with how what's happening in the courts with I mean Trump not being held accountable for anything, the way that he's filling up his administration with people who are not experienced in this regard. Things are about to fundamentally change. It's about to be a big contentious situation, in the States. And so Democrats are going to have to adapt. It doesn't mean you have to stoop to their level, but utilize the tools that you have in order to do what's best for the country to minimize some of the damage that's coming in for the country and for the people.
Let me ask you both this, because there's been a lot of discussion over the past several years about how no one should be above the law, right? And we need to hold everyone accountable. Just because you're in office, you're the president, doesn't mean that you should be able to do whatever you want. I think that's very applicable now. With all that being said, should we have the power to pardon? Should we grant the president the power to pardon or the governor to pardon on a state level? Should that be a law or a rule at all? Isn't that, in a sense, putting them above the law?
Having the ability to put people above the law. I mean,
it's putting them above the law just by giving them the ability to do it, because they're saying they could just take anyone out the criminal justice system for no good reason other than, it was a personal favor to a friend.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder where that comes from, though. Should we look at where this power originates from?
Why that was that? That might be part of the actual Constitution.
Is it?
I think so.
I think you should, because I think they should have some, maybe it could be to a certain extent or limited, but I think they should have the power to pardon, because you have a lot of innocent people
True.
that need that.
Innocent people, but who determines innocence, though? They're not the court.
I mean,
we have checks and balances, right? We have the judicial system.
Right. But if you do your research on the person, it's happening now. It's just on the law. People are getting out of jail for things they haven't committed. That's basically like a pardon, right?
I think it makes sense.
Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1 of the Constitution. That's where it comes from.
I think what she was saying makes a lot of sense, and it reminds me of how many people have been saved from execution by governor pardons. And even though we have justice system and we have the process, it can fail, and there should be some remedies.
That's one thing that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was it Bill Clinton? I think Bill Clinton did this when he was governor of Arkansas. On the way out of the governor's mansion, right? When he was leaving office as governor, I believe he took everyone off death row and commuted their sentence to a life sentence.
Right. I think we should have as many outs in that regard on our way to justice. But the idea, the problem is to have that.
Yeah.
We have to rely on the person wielding that power to have some sort of a moral stance or benevolence about them,
Right.
that they don't misuse it.
But they never
Right.
do. That's what I'm saying. Like, and maybe there should be more study on this. Maybe there should be, exposed more, talked about more, covered more, because you always hear stories of that. They're not pardoning people because they've done so much research and they think beyond a reasonable doubt that this person is innocent. They're not the court system. They don't have the ability really to do that, nor the time to do that, with the resources. That's not their job. That's not their role. They're
Yeah.
friends. That's they're pardoning their friends, or people. You know what I mean? That's what they're doing,
Yeah.
or family members.
That happens. And I think in some cases
Yeah.
there are people that lobby for it and bring forth the case to try to get these pardons passed through.
Right,
Mhm.
but follow the money, right? Look at who's lobbying them, who gave them a campaign contribution, maybe, right?
Right.
This
Yeah.
isn't being done all for benevolent reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Um, it is definitely a good point.
So, yeah, what do you guys think about that out there? Anyone watching and listening? Should we? And of course, you would need to enact a constitutional amendment if you really want to take the president's power away. But what do you think? Should we? Do you think if you had the ability to take that power away, would you?
We've got in the chat a comment. One said Trump pardoned like 275 people. I don't know if that's the exact number, but maybe somewhere. But the other thing, I guess, in response to your question, it said, I'd say, can we vote on who gets pardoned, but people elect convicted felons, which is sad. So
Yeah.
Right. And do you really want to give a convicted felon the ability to pardon people?
well, he's got one now. He's gonna
Yeah.
have it.
I've got a list here. Oh wow. Okay, this is interesting. I've got a list because I was curious. How many people have been pardoned by each president? Huh?
Uh-oh.
Huh?
Okay.
We should play a game. I was going to tell you this, Jay. I think a way to get more views on the podcast is to play these games so that we can put a clip of it, and then people watching the clip can play along, and this way it increases the engagement.
So you've got a list here of how many have been pardoned. So let's
by president, yeah.
Okay, so we got, let's say, Biden, Trump, Obama, Bush, right? Those four presidents. Throw out numbers and see if we can pick whose numbers fit who.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're the four previous presidents, right?
Right.
We got four numbers here.
Right.
Okay, here are the four numbers. And I guess I'll go from least to most?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, sure.
Okay. 26, 200, 237, 1,927.
Wow.
1,927? Jesus, that's huge.
That's a lot. Yeah.
That's like a whole prison itself. Like, just everyone go.
So the game is guess how many pardons each president made.
Wow.
Now, who are the presidents again?
We have Biden.
Our last four presidents: Biden, Trump, Obama, Bush.
You know what? I'm gonna say 26 is Biden, because he's still in office and he's still got a time to go to make his final list. I'm
Not
say,
much.
All right, I know, not much, but
I see what you mean. They might do it like when they're like the last week or something like that.
Right. I'm gonna say Biden's 26. I would like to say let's go Biden, Obama 200, Trump 237, Bush 1927.
Okay. Now, keep in mind, to be technical here, this is a list of people pardoned or granted clemency, right? So related things, not exactly the same. All right. So that was your guess. Sheba, do you have a guess?
For 1900, I would say
I feel like Trump might be 1927.
1927.
Because you added the
I
clemency.
would give that high number. I could see Trump, because Trump pardoned a lot of people. So I'll say 1927 with him.
Yeah, let me do that too.
Yeah.
You're changing your answer.
Because you added clemency in there with those numbers.
Right.
Yeah.
26, I would say Obama. I would say Obama, because I never heard of him pardoned anyone. So not that he didn't. And now what were the other numbers? I'm sorry,
200 and
237,
237
200.
and
Um,
237.
now I would give 200 to, did I say Bush?
Okay, you can give 200 to Bush. So 237 would then be who?
Who was the last president? I'm sorry. Who was the last?
Biden.
Biden,
Biden.
Trump, Obama, Bush.
Biden, Trump. Okay, I'll give it Biden.
Okay. So that puts my numbers go 26 Biden, 200 Obama, 1927 Trump, 237 Bush.
Okay. You're both wrong. Biden did do 26.
Oh, he did 26.
Yep. Trump 237.
Okay.
Okay.
Obama 1,927.
Oh, okay.
Bush 200.
Interesting. I
Okay.
wonder what
Yeah.
those 1927 entail.
Yeah. I never even heard that he had get pardoned anyone.
It,
And
it
see, it's
wasn't
funny. A lot, you know, I'll be honest. We hear a lot of things happening in the news, you know,
Mhm.
especially over this past several years, where it's like, whoa, Biden did this or Trump did this. We never heard this before. And yet it actually happened a lot, sometimes a lot more frequently under Obama, but it wasn't really covered
yeah.
the same way. The coverage
Right.
has changed a
Yeah.
lot over these past 8 years or so. Um,
Right.
Even like when it comes to presidential assassination attempts, right? People are like, oh, they tried
Mhm.
to shoot Trump 2, 3 times, and they tried to shoot Obama a bunch of times, right? And it wasn't in the news, but it never really was a huge national story like these became.
Right. I
Right.
remember
Oh, okay.
there was the on the White House lawn. There was a
Yeah, they
thing
were
with
shooting at the White House, right.
yeah, I remember
There
that.
were all kinds of plots that were thwarted by Secret Service and so forth.
I think
Wow.
clemency is what can pump those numbers up. And the reason why I thought Trump did the 1927 is because during his presidency, I remember a lot of talk about people trying to come to him for clemency and pardons for people for prisoners. And
Mhm.
the Kardashians were going up there. What was Kim Kardashian
Right.
was holding talks with him, trying to get some people pardoned. And I was thinking Bush was a higher number, the 237, because of coming out of the war time. That's why initially I thought he was the 1927 because trying to pardon people through that.
Well, here's an interesting fact. So, looking into these Obama numbers, Obama holds the record for the largest single day use of the clemency power, granting
Oh.
330 commutations on January 19th, 2017, his last full day in office. And
Now, were
so,
these unfair convictions like drug offenses, that type of things,
Yeah.
setting the record straight?
could be, or could be people again that he knows or lobbyists, convince them to
True,
do it.
true, true.
So, if you want to look at pardons alone under Obama, 212
Okay.
Mm.
Okay, so they have it broken apart.
on the Obama article, yes.
Okay, so the
Mm.
rest of those were clemency.
For Obama, yeah.
Right. So that
Mhm.
could be, I mean, and it's speculation, of course, we have to look into it. I know Obama was working to minimize or overturn some of the Rockefeller drug law era
Mm.
laws
Yeah.
and convictions. So that could be where some of those numbers came up from.
Right.
504 life sentences he commuted.
Oh.
Let's see. You can actually go in, it'll show you all of his pardons. I'm trying to see if we can get a classification of these clemencies. Because you know what?
I'm looking right now.
Okay.
It looks like, um, yeah, and here it goes. He was focusing on commuting sentences for nonviolent drug offenders.
Mm.
So that makes sense because this was during the height of the drug war that these people got these
Right.
ridiculous,
Ridiculous. Yeah.
unfair sentences. And so he was
Uh-huh.
looking to kind of set some of these things straight.
Now, to your point, Jay, Biden hasn't left office. I mean, he still has a little bit more time. So he may
Mhm.
actually end up beating Obama's record or putting up big numbers on the board himself. I wouldn't be surprised if on
Mhm.
January 19th, his last full day, that number
Right.
shoots up,
Right.
right? And he might do
Right.
something similar. Maybe he's a class of people he thinks were unfairly convicted or, whatever it is. I could definitely see something like that happening given his record so far.
Right. And it
Yeah.
would make sense to do so, especially looking at the type of people that the incoming administration is looking to target. If he could like
Mm.
circumvent some of that, um, that would be helpful. I mean, think about activist groups, right? Him and his crew have called BLM, for example, terrorist
Mhm.
organizations, you know,
Mhm.
and many
Well,
states.
that's why, Jay, because you said that, what if that ended up getting on some kind of list put out there by the administration, and then if what Sheba is saying is the law, any group that does business with BLM loses their 501c3 status?
It could be something in that
Yeah.
regard. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And that's a way to kind of choke out those activist groups.
Right, dissenters.
And think about it,
Mhm.
that would involve a lot of groups,
Yeah.
ACLU, right?
Right.
The what's the Jewish one? Um, what's the Jewish
Yeah,
uh,
I know what you're talking about.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah,
come on, y'all.
Anti-Defamation League.
Yes,
Yes.
That's the
Defamation League, right? These are all groups that have done activist work where
right.
a lot of the extreme uh, right and conservatives that are backing Trump or in going to be woven in would look at them as terrorist organizations because these are groups that have called those people like Proud Boys, like white supremacists, like those as dangerous to America. So that revenge on that get back could be uh,
Mhm.
putting them in jeopardy.
And
So
Martin Luther King was
Southern
classified as
Poverty,
a terrorist, right?
yeah, yeah. Southern
Mhm.
Poverty Law Center is another one.
Mhm. And when I found out that that there are 350 plus organizations that are talking to their congressmen or going to Congress to talk about this issue,
Right.
because and you have to consider too that you have a lot of quite a few, I wouldn't say a lot, but you have quite a few organizations that do assist immigrants.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
And that could be that could be, targeted as well, you're assisting,
Mhm.
these illegals or this terrorists, and
Mhm.
you've got
Mhm.
issues here.
Here's something interesting that I just came across. And I guess they're not counting this in Biden's numbers, although maybe they should.
Hmm.
Um, on October 6th, 2022, Biden pardoned all those convicted of what was previously the federal offense of simple possession of marijuana,
Hmm.
totaling
Mhm.
6,500 via proclamation.
I remember that. I
This
remember that.
excluded non-US citizens and those who were considered illegal immigrants at the time of their arrest. So if you're counting that, Biden does have the highest number, 6,500.
Yeah.
Yeah,
By far.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
No, I remember that. I think that should be counted in there.
I would think so, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe, I don't know, because it's a proclamation, and I don't know, maybe I guess it's being classified somehow differently, but he is pardoning them. Now, yes, it isn't a crime anymore. I'm
Mhm.
wondering if because of some kind of legal mechanism
Right.
aside from the pardon that kicks in, but I do think he did use his pardon power to do it.
Right.
That's
Right.
good. Yeah.
No, and yeah, I remember when that happened. And I think, it's to me that's what we should be doing going forward, right? Looking at injustices of the past and trying to correct them going forward in ways that we can. These were laws that were unjust at the
Mhm.
time. Same with what Obama was doing, correcting some of the war on drugs type of sentencing type of things that,
Mhm.
we've come to understand that they're unjust. A lot of people agree that they're unjust. So let's instead of letting these people just languish under these sentences, let's do something about it and move forward.
Mhm.
Right. Well, we wanted to put a poll question out for the people, and we were going to ask about the Hunter pardon in particular. So the poll question of the week is: do you agree with President Biden's decision to pardon his son Hunter?
Yeah, true, true, true.
Yeah, I wonder why. Now it kind of bothers me when we were playing that game. Would you have guessed, by the way, if one of the numbers was like 7,000 or something? Would you have guessed
No.
Biden?
Um, I wouldn't have.
No.
And if we thought about it, it would have made sense because I do remember the marijuana. Now that you said it, I do remember the
Right,
marijuana.
right. Now that we mentioned it,
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
yeah. I wonder why they don't count that in his total. Is it because it's too staggering of a number? Like, whoa, the Biden people are editing the Wikipedia article. Oh no, take that number off our board.
Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah. How did the camera just move?
I don't
I
know.
was possessed by a ghost, I swear.
It's
I didn't
motorized.
touch it. It just moved on its own.
Motorized. It's on the move. So
All right. Well, we've had an enriching discussion as always. Do we have a bottom line? I would ask Sheba for the bottom line, but she wasn't here for the whole conversation.
all right. So Mike Scala, what is the bottom line?
Well, we did speak a lot about reforms, in particular criminal justice, right? We had the pardoning, we had the Rikers Island situation. And so I would say the bottom line is let's try to move towards a system of fairness, right? I think there are numerous ways to do that, one of which would be better conditions in our facilities, right? Just because people are prisoners doesn't mean that we should treat them inhumanely. And I do think as a society, we want to be moving more towards rehabilitation and away from retribution, as really is the case now, right? And so maybe with more fairness and better treatment for everyone, we can get to a better place, which is a safer, more prosperous, more just society.
I agree. I think it's a good goal to shoot for. And we can be found on YouTube at Nuance Show, Instagram as well, and then everywhere podcasts are available, Amazon, Apple Music, Spotify, etc., etc. So join us.
Yes, as always. Thank you, Sheba. Thank you, Jay. Thank you all for joining us. We've got work to do, and we'll catch you next time.